This event happened back in the summer of 2018 and has since stuck with me as one of the scariest nights I have ever experienced. I was traveling back home with my girlfriend. We had been away for a long weekend for my brother's wedding, which had ended up being an incredible and emotional weekend. We decided to road trip and journey and spend some quality time together, to get the most enjoyment out of the trip. On the way back home, it was late at night. We were on the highway and there were barely any other cars in sight. I was tired from all the driving that I'd already done as it was a long trip. As soon as we got off the highway and made a turn onto another road, the absence of light made the road almost pitch black. I put our full beam on and we continued our journey. I was going at some speed as the road was dead when suddenly another car came up in front of us. It was going at a very steady pace, so slow that I approached it fast and was lucky to see it instead of crashing into it. It was crawling at a snail's pace, literally, the whole open road in front of it, yet it was doing it so slow, like it was doing it on purpose. I got restless as this was under half of the speed limit, and at this point, I didn't want to be stuck on the road for hours, so I took the opportunity to overtake the car. As I passed, I couldn't help but honk my horn to let the driver know of their inconvenience as I took it over, pulling back onto the road in front of it, getting back to a normal speed and continuing on our way. But as soon as I did this, and we were out of sight, the driver behind us, out of nowhere, caught up and flashed its lights, honking their horn loudly as it picked up speed to a point it was right behind us, bumper to bumper. They kept their full beam on, making it difficult for me to see through the rearview mirror. The car forcefully took us over and sped past, cutting right in front of us as it broke, causing me to brake hard, slamming on the brakes. Disappearing from our sight, the car sped off. My girlfriend, and in all fairness myself, were understandably shaken up by these events and still had a long way to go to get home. So with it being late and considering what had just happened, we decided to stop at a motel nearby and stay for the night to get some rest. We planned to continue our journey the next morning. On reflection, I shouldn't have beeped my horn, but there was no need for that type of retaliation from that creep. After booking the motel, we headed to our room. It was just your basic motel, a simple room, nothing special, pretty old-fashioned, just somewhere to put our head down for the night. Looking around, it was very quiet, not many guests looked to be staying there. So we settled in for the night, having calmed down from what had just happened. It must have been around 1 a.m. when we both woke up to the sound of a loud knocking on our door. Surprised as to who could have been knocking on our room, I got up and opened the door. As I did, there was no one there. Confused, I shut the door and began to walk back to our bed. As I lay back down, there was then a heavy pounding on the door once again. I ran back and hurriedly opened the door, but again, there was no one. I didn't get how someone could disappear out of sight that fast. Even as I checked the lot out front, not a soul was in sight. But it was then, however, when I was checking the lot, I recognized the car parked out front. A knot built up in my stomach as I could see clearly that it was the same car we had passed that had tailgated us earlier that night. No one was in it. I slowly entered back into our room and shut the door, not wanting to mention it to my girlfriend, knowing it would only freak her out. I decided to call the front desk. The motel staff suit answered. I told the receptionist that I believed someone was pranking us and had been knocking on our door. They promised to check it out. After around 5 minutes, I looked back out into the lot outside. The car was nowhere in sight. To be honest, I felt relieved as I was sure it was the same person from earlier and feared it was them at our door. I obviously couldn't sleep well after that, so I let my girlfriend sleep while I just lay there thinking. Some time passed, and I must have drifted off myself as I was awoken to the scream of my girlfriend and fear running through my veins. What woke us was the sound of smashing glass tearing through the night as a brick had crashed through the window and landed on the wooden floor with a loud thud. Without a second to waste, I rushed to the door and opened it. Once again, there was no one there. I scanned the immediate vicinity of our room but saw nothing. As I turned back to check on my girlfriend, it was then that I saw it, pinned to the outside of the door to our room. There was a mangled animal carcass, dripping with blood. I backed up as my girlfriend saw this and began to cry. My heel kicked the brick that had been thrown through the window as I looked down and saw it was wrapped in something. As I picked it up, my heart now thumping in my throat, I unwrapped the brick to reveal a piece of paper that contained 3 simple words, written in what seemed to be the blood of the animal. And in all honesty, it scared the crap out of me. I'll get you. My eyes widened as I looked back out front to an empty lot. We were beyond terrified and reported it to the front desk and the police instantly. I told them everything that had happened that night involving the car we overtook and the fact that I saw the same car at the motel, believing it had followed us and was the person who had done this. They investigated the matter, but it really didn't get anywhere, because the most surprising thing was that there was no CCTV footage recorded from that night. It's safe to say we didn't stay around at the motel after that. We left for home, soon after speaking with the police with the fear of being followed and watched, making us paranoid. The events of that night have stayed with me ever since, and it's a shame when I look back at my brother's wedding that I always think of that night. It's needless to say I'm always cautious as to who is on the road now when I'm traveling, as you truly don't know who is out there and what their motivation is. It only takes provoking the wrong person to come back to haunt you. I mean, what psycho kills and pins animals to a door? So please, think twice when you're out on the road. You just don't know who you might come across. Back in late 2015, my wife and I were on vacation in Florida, which was one of our go-to holiday destinations, as we'd been there multiple times and always seemed to have a great time. This holiday, however, was one that we will never forget for all the wrong reasons. We were enjoying our first few days on our break, doing your typical vacation things that you would expect, visiting the theme parks and having a great time. We always went around fall, as in that season the best things were happening. We'd finished a long day exploring one of the parks and were pretty beat. So the plan was to go out for food and for a few drinks and then head back to our hotel for the night and get ready for another big day the next day. That night, we chose to go to a local Chili's not too far from our hotel. It was located off a side road, but in a good location with a few bars nearby. After finishing up our meals, we had a few drinks at the bar before getting ready to head back to the room. It was around 10 p.m., and after finishing up a good night, we knew it was still quite early, but we headed back as we planned to be up early the next morning. On the walk back to our hotel, the sight of people got less and less, as our hotel was not situated on a main road, but down a back road, so we would have to walk away from the main strip area. As we were walking down this quiet road back to the hotel, I felt my wife tug at my shirt, pulling on my arm. I looked at her to see what she was doing, and without saying anything, I saw her eyes guiding me to look across the street, and as I did, I saw what she was trying to get my attention for. Standing by an alley across the road from us was a clown, just standing there, staring at us, motionless. I looked over at them, staring back. He never blinked and kept his eyes locked onto us. After staring for a good minute, they began to wave at us, which my wife became a little freaked out at, but I laughed, telling her it was probably somebody looking to get a reaction and to freak people out. As I knew, and we had all known of the clown craze that had been on the news and online over the past few years, this was prime time. We carried on walking to our hotel, but my wife looked back, checking. She noticed the clown was now walking in our direction, following us. She began to tell me how this was freaking her out. She didn't want him to see where we were going, so I told her not to pay him any attention and that we would stop off at the bar next to our hotel for a drink so this freak would clear off before we got to our room. We did just that, and as we sat at the bar to get a drink, I turned, watching the clown. He continued to stare at us and stopped dead opposite of the bar. At this point, I had had enough of this prank and I was about to go over to him, but he then began to walk off and continued down the road to the point we could no longer see him. I laughed it off and told my clearly freaked out wife that everything was fine. It was just a stupid but harmless prank. I managed to calm her and she was soon fine after, and we had a few drinks. We were finally back at our hotel after our unexpected stop-off. Our hotel was nothing fancy, just a nice room to stay. That's all we needed, not being in it that much. But our room was located around the back, outside of the building and on the bottom floor. Back in the room, I was getting myself comfy, flicking through the TV whilst my wife took a shower. I was just starting to zone out when I jumped to the sound of my wife's blood-curdling scream coming from the bathroom. It scared the crap out of me. I banged on the door, asking if she was okay. As she opened it, I saw the shock on her face. She told me she heard continuous tapping on the bathroom window, and as she looked to see what it was, she had seen the same clown from earlier out back of our room peering through the window. Surprised and angered by what she was telling me, I looked around but couldn't see the clown. I told her to stay put as I ran to the front desk to report this to the hotel staff. As I ran to the front desk, I noticed my wife quickly following me with her robe, stating that she was too scared to wait alone. We reported it to the staff, and the manager sent someone around the hotel to check this out and promised us that the staff would patrol and be on the lookout. Shaken by the event, we went back to our room. The door was left off the latch. With my wife in too much of a hurry following me, she forgot to pull it shut. I told my wife the hotel would look into it and that we should get some rest and deal with it in the morning, and that everything was now fine. Trying to sleep that night was difficult. I was in and out of sleep when I was awoke by a slight noise. Half asleep, I was unable to register what the sound was, but as I was awake, I got up to pee. As I finished up and left the bathroom to head back to bed, I reached for the light switch, and it was at that moment fear kicked in. With the light from the bathroom, I noticed the bottom of the bedsheet quickly fall down, as if something had been holding it up and then quickly let go, leaving the light on. I slowly approached my wife and tapped her on the shoulder until she woke up. I covered her mouth and signaled for her to go out the front door. She must have seen the look in my eyes, as she didn't question me and she made her way over to it. I slowly crouched down at the bottom of the bed, my heart pounding as I hesitated to lift the sheet. But forcing myself, I quickly yanked it up, and to my horror, I fell back in shock as under the bed was the same man, dressed as the clown from earlier. He screamed as he quickly tried to wiggle from under the bed. Seeing this, my wife screamed at the top of her lungs, and I shouted at her to run to the front desk and get help, and hotel security. Having no other option, I dove onto the clown as she ran off. I tried to pin him down so he couldn't escape, fearing for my life, but adrenaline had taken over at this point. The clown, wiggling away, screamed at me that he would kill me and kill my wife. Hearing this made my heart race more. Thankfully, it was then my wife had returned with hotel staff and they managed to get the clown restrained. The clown was arrested. It was soon found that the guy had previous convictions, and after the police telling us how lucky we were that I had woken up, as his plan was to hide out until we were fully asleep and then assault us and rob our room. He had managed to sneak into the room when my wife left the door open and followed me to reception. I'm lucky I woke up. I have no doubt of what that man's intentions were for me, and who knows what he would have done with my wife. That was the worst experience of our lives, and every time we go on vacation now, we always have that paranoid feeling in our heads and hope nothing like that ever happens again. Thank you all for listening to these chilling encounters. You may have already seen, but we hit 100 subscribers earlier this week. So literally, just want to thank you all for watching and hope you're enjoying the terrifying content. It means a lot, you guys, and you are appreciated. We look forward to our horror community and our world of horror motives growing with you all. So until next time, please, if you haven't already, subscribe, hit that bell, like, comment, and share. And above all, remember, fear lies within.